Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome to the Piper Report. So Steve Bannon has made a suggestion for a tax bracket that I completely agree with. Now, in a perfect world, there should not be any income tax at all. There should be no welfare state. In fact, what most people don't understand is that the concept of an income tax was considered unconstitutional in the late 1800s. The Supreme Court ruled that income tax is unconstitutional. Now, most people can't imagine living their life without some type of income tax that is causing a burden on them. We have the people in the lower class who rely on a lot of income taxes for entitlements. And then we have also people that make good money or decent money that know that they're not going to get all their money because of income tax. The 16th Amendment is a failed ideology. It's a failed concept. We do not need an income tax rate at all. But while we have the constant dispersion of entitlements and the ever-increasing poverty rates, entitlements will be a continuous phenomenon that the U.S. will abide by. So until we actually end the welfare state and start moving forward in a new direction, a direction that deviates away from the norm, if you will, that goes back to the free enterprise and the concept of the free market, we are stuck with income tax. But we do not need the 16th Amendment. We do not need welfare states, etc., etc. But anyways, Steve Bannon has made a suggestion. Now before I go over it, most of you have probably heard that Trump said he wants to do the biggest tax cut of all time, one of the biggest tax cuts, and a lot of people agree with that. I do agree with that to some degree, and I'll explain the difference why. But what Bannon suggests, let's go over the article. Steve Bannon is causing a stir inside the administration by pushing an idea that's anathema to most Republicans, raising taxes on the wealthiest Americans to pay for steep middle and working class tax cuts. Some officials who've heard Bannon's idea think it's crazy, but the president's chief strategist believes it's a potent populist idea. Bannon has told colleagues he wants the top income tax bracket to have a 4 in front of it. The top bracket is currently 39.6% for Americans who earn more than $418,400. It's classic Bannon, pushing a maximalist position that's reviled by the Republican establishment. This is a good idea. I like this. Like I said, in a perfect world, it wouldn't be an income tax. But if I was president and I had basically full control over Congress and I could institute the tax brackets that I want, I would have 3. Well, 4 if you count 0, but 10, 25, and 40. 40% tax cuts or tax rate or more would be for people who make $1 million or more. 25% taxes would be for people who make $200,000 to $999,000. 10% would be people who make $40,000 to $199,000. And then below $40,000 would be free. This would remit a lot of wealth back into the middle class and to the lower class. This would shrink the poverty line. This would be an overall good thing to have. But the Republicans in Congress, most of them are rich. Actually, most members of Congress are rich, not just Republicans. They want to cut taxes for the rich. But I think a corporate tax rate of 15% would be good. But keep the highest tax rate for sole individual income taxes at 40%. What you can also do with the corporate tax rate is give tax credits for businesses that expand, that do research and development, and expand their company and businesses into areas that lack GDP growth. So instead of 15%, maybe if they build a new facility in Detroit, Michigan, maybe they get 10% for that. You can work it that way as well. But it's imperative to cut taxes for the middle class and for the lower class, first and foremost. The rich people make enough. They don't have to get their taxes cut, but the corporate tax rate should be cut. This would also drive businesses to come back here from overseas and to stop hiding their money in offshore accounts. They will have incentive to continue to expand their businesses by bringing their money back over here. They don't have to hide it anymore from the IRS. It would close a lot of the loopholes that they use, because many corporations and businesses don't pay any income tax at all, don't pay any corporate tax rate. They can hide their money and use loopholes to their advantage. This would remove that option from them. This would allow them to feel safe by bringing their money back over. And not all corporations and CEOs are evil. Yes, a lot of them are greedy, but a lot of them do want to help people by expanding their jobs. by expanding their businesses and creating jobs. Moving on. While all the public attention has been going to healthcare, Trump aides are teeing up an extremely aggressive tax plan. Lobbyists who have met with Gary Cohn and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin say they've been struck by how impatient the two appear. Cohn has told associates that if tax reform doesn't get done this year, it's probably never going to happen. Sources who know Cohn speculate that he'll leave the White House the instant he concludes tax reform is dead. And he should. Tax reform is probably the most important issue on Donald Trump's presidential plate. He needs to achieve tax reform. It's the only way we can actually increase our GDP. It's the only way we can actually guarantee massive job growth. We need to do tax reform. Obamacare or healthcare is important, I agree. But we don't have to do the both of them at the same time. We can focus on tax reform while the Senate and the House are working out their issues with the healthcare bill. But tax reform should be done as soon as possible. If it does not get done, it will have devastating effects for Republicans and for Trump in future elections, in my opinion. Where's I at? While Cohn and Mnuchin differ stylistically, Cohn is brash and physically imposing, while Mnuchin is mild-mannered. Sources who've been meeting with them say they share the same philosophy: go big or go home. What this means: Cohn and Mnuchin aren't bluffing when they say they want to slash the corporate tax rate to 15% from the current 35%. Neither man has any interest in timid tax cuts, and they wager that special interests will relinquish their loopholes if they become convinced their tax rate really will be in the teens. They're becoming far less wedded to revenue neutrality, the idea favored by House and Senate Republican leadership that tax cuts mustn't add to the deficit. This scares me. We need a balanced budget. We cannot keep on with inflation, with the ever expansion of government spending, because the more we do that, the more our dollar devalues. The more our dollar devalues, the worse it is for the lower class and middle class. Because when inflation happens, that means more money becomes circulating in the economy. That means the dollar in your pocket right now would devalue. Its value is less than it was before inflation happened. But the prices stay the same. So in essence, you're losing money. You are losing value in your bank account due to mass government spending. Because the government can only borrow so much from the people before it starts having to borrow from other countries. And what it can't borrow from the countries or its own people, it borrows from the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve doesn't have a bank. The Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air. They're not really lending the U.S. money. They're creating money for the U.S. to have and charging them interest that's compounded. And that interest increases the debt exponentially, which devalues the dollar more and more, which also harms the credit of the United States. That's why it's important to bring the deficit down, balance the budget, cut government spending. Tax reform is important, but government spending is more. You can't just cut taxes and keep government spending the same. You have to do massive cut in government spending. You can cut the military spending, you can cut welfare, you can cut entitlements, you can get rid of departments like Department of Education, you can get rid of the Department of Homeland Security and instead absorb it into the FBI and then do a hiring freeze. There are many, many options to choose from, but you have to stop expanding government. You have to stop increasing government spending. Tax reform and spending should be done simultaneously. Cut spending, cut taxes, and you will see massive, massive GDP growth. They're increasingly tantalized by an idea some conservatives like Grover Norquist and Senator Pat Toomey are pushing: allow major tax cuts to last longer than 10 years without having to balance the budget. No, that is wrong. That's a horrible idea. That is not a conservative. Conservatives like Toomey favor. That's not conservative. Conservative isn't increasing government spending, but doing tax cuts. That's moderate. You are still worsening the debt and the credit of the United States. See, that's why people in Congress aren't really conservatives. There are some conservatives in Congress: Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. But for the most part, they have shifted primarily to the left. Most Republicans are moderate, and some of them even act like Democrats in a lot of ways. We don't need that. We can't have that. That's imperative. Context. The last time Congress passed major tax reform in 1986, it was a 2-year roller coaster. This time, the White House officials driving the process have concluded there's no chance of getting Democrats to support what Trump wanted to do. So they believe it must be done before the 2018 midterm elections or not at all. I think if you actually keep taxes high on the rich, I think many of the Democrats will go along with that. A lot of them won't, because a lot of them are obstructionists who just want to harm Trump at all costs. But some of them will. If you keep the income tax high for the rich, cut the rest, some Democrats will follow in line. Well, Trump has a lot of things to take care of here, but he should get done with tax reform right away, and he should try to cut spending as much as possible, as soon as possible. And I'm done.